Here's Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck, TSN hockey analyst. Were you at Coldplay last night?
I was not. No, everyone was though.
Everybody was at Coldplay in Toronto last night.
I got some tickets for some family members, but I did not partake.
Look at you! What a hero! How about so? First of all, Blake and I have both lived in that city, and I'm like, I'm sorry, they're playing where? Like I had never heard of the stadium. And then I saw Chris Martin say thank you to everyone who took, planes, trains, cars to this stadium in the middle of nowhere.
Dude, I'll tell you what. You could say it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's about time us people up in the 905 region.
Okay.
Got a little something where we don't got to go planes, trains, and automobiles all the way down to Lakeshore and get home at 2 a.m. when the concert ends at 11.
Where did they play?
Downsview Park. They built a stadium. Live Nation
at the
built
old
a
airport.
Stadium.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
it's on the I think it's on the runway.
Yeah.
Like it is in the middle of nowhere.
Which is where they did SARS Fest. They did SARS Fest.
Yeah.
It was,
I will say it was a pretty good scene, and I have been to a Coldplay show, so I know that Chris Martin does take pride in finding out something local and bringing that to the microphone. Did you hear him yesterday? Blue Jays, fantastic run. Now we got to get those starters going deeper into ball games to preserve the bullpen.
Oh, he's analyzing.
Exactly. The crowd.
Get him on the show.
Yeah, right.
I'll give this to Toronto. They've got that one, which is like a semi-permanent, like they'll tear it down at the end of the summer. But and then they've got the new Ontario place, whatever they call that, the Budweiser stage or whatever that is.
We're trying to build a soccer specific.
I don't know if they're tearing this thing down. It kind of looks like it's there to stay. I think this is a legit thing.
I think they semi-tear it down at the end of the year, and then we'll rebuild the next. It's going to be like a semi-permanent summer structure.
Okay.
Yeah. But you got more venues than we do right now. It's too bad. We need something like that.
Not like I'm taking advantage of it, but
no, exactly.
Well, when you have when you have two newborns at home,
outdoor festivals are going to be soon in your wheelhouse. Though you bring them in the stroller, you just park them there, and you watch a festival.
Yeah, we'll be there.
You're close. You're close.
Headphones like young Francesco behind the Canucks bench.
Right.
Remember, he grew up with the headphones.
That's right,
Piero.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to hockey. That was enough. Frank, we are now wondering the price that the Canucks might have to pay to get that elusive top six center. And we're asking on our Whistler Golf Club poll question, highest price you'd pay, whether that's the two top prospects, Lekramaki and Wielander, whether that's the 26th first-round pick and one of those prospects, whether that's D. Petey, Elias Patterson. What says you, my friend? They have struck out, and there's apparently a lot of competition for this profile of player. How high should they be willing to go?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, and you're going to do the transaction, something substantial is going to have to go the other way. Like, there's just no way around it. There's too many teams that are in the same boat as the Canucks that need that, like, coveted number 2 center. And we're going to wait and see how the season plays out, because I'm sure teams want to go into it and see how many games they lose and see where they're at before they make the decision. Like, no one's willing to throw in the towel just yet. But I think it's going to be a situation where if Vancouver has a package and Montreal has a package, and who are the other teams looking for second-line centers? Like, I feel like there's a whole bunch of them, but those are the two that come to mind right away. Like, who... The team that has that player, like if it's Pittsburgh or whoever has that player, they're going to try and create a little bit of a bidding war for you. I would go this way. I would say I'm willing to part with one of my A guys, but definitely not two at the same time. There's no way I could stomach doing like Wielander plus Lekramaki. And I think the Canucks are going to be in a situation where they have to see how well they play, how many wins and losses they have. Because if it gets to the point where it's like you can kind of see where this team is headed and it's not anywhere good, then why would you move Wielander or Lekramaki or DPD? Because those are the guys you're going to build this thing around, hopefully, as things turn the corner. But I still think there's too much hockey that needs to be played when the season gets going before you can honestly say what a price is going to be for a second-line center.
I spoke about the first-round pick moving last week to him and Jeff, and they both, They winced. They were cowering. They said, no, you cannot, because the Wheels. I think the Canucks can make the playoffs. I think there's a very, I won't say easy path, but I think there's a reasonable path to the playoffs for them. But it's certainly a non-zero chance that the Wheels fall off again this year.
What if everyone gets hurt again? What if it's a complete disaster again? That's why I would definitely wait and see on that first round pick. Because you just don't know where they're going to be at. I think like the guys that have been playing, the prospects, you have a general feel for where they're going to be. But yeah, I kind of see like Winnipeg's another team really needs a second line center. They couldn't get it done. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams that they might not have the package. Like Montreal will have the package. I don't know if Winnipeg would be able to put together something the way Vancouver can, but there's just too much hockey that needs to be played before you can like really truly say what gets included. But I would start with this. It's one of the guys. It can't be both in the same transaction. There's just no way, because you're not getting, like, unless you're getting a 23-year-old stud, you're probably getting someone who's 27, 28, maybe in their 30s. Like, it's just,
unless it's a Rossi trade.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, there's not many of the 23-year-old studs. And even with Rossi, we talk about him. We like him as a player. He's 5'10".
Yeah.
Right. So
if that, Frank, if that,
right, if
that might be stretched out.
Right. So I still think that puts a clamp on how much you can truly, how much currency you can truly pay for a guy like that who's just, he's not built like the way Malkin was built when he was Crosby's number 2 guy and those guys were winning cups.
And the minute Minnesota trades Rossi, by the way, they'll need a center.
Well,
they become one of those teams too.
Vancouver, Montreal, LA, Winnipeg, Carolina, Toronto, Minnesota, on and on it goes in terms of the teams that are looking for top 2 center icemen. Anyways, the re-signing of Brock Besser, and in the immediate term, the acquisition of Evander Kane. Does that make Lekkerimaki the most tradable here, because you're not going to be counting on him as much this upcoming season?
We thought he was the Besser replacement.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's not the right shot defenseman that Wielander is.
Well, he's the most tradable, I guess, for Vancouver's point of view. But I think if you're another team, you're like, I kind of like the Wielander kid, who I think is going to be a big-time defenseman, minute-munching guy that I can pretty much pinpoint what I'm going to get from him. Long career, steady guy, big minutes, all situations. If I'm another team and I'm trying to forecast what Lekkerimaki is going to be, it's harder because there's too many of the guys that have been, and I don't want to disparage these guys because they're good players in their own right, but it's like the Martin Ferks or the Jesse, the Timu Pulkkinens of the world, right? Who are the big, booming, one-timer, right-handed shots, and it's like, it's great, it's fancy, it might have some cachet with another team, but did it ever really turn into 50 goals a year in the NHL? It didn't, right? So I think that the other teams would look at Wielander and probably even D. Petey and say, I know what that's going to be, and I can use that. There might be a little bit of, we'll take a look at Lekkerimaki, but that doesn't mean I'm giving you something that I think is a sure thing in return, because I can't forecast. There's too many examples of that going the other way than the way that I would want it to go.
Frank, we've had a number of fans say to us, hey, guys, Dakota Joshua played center earlier in his career. And he's actually, we did the math yesterday, he's actually taken a fair number of faceoffs in his NHL.
40, 50 a year sort of
thing?
Yeah,
58 per year in his NHL career. Where are you on guys who have had time at center ice in their minor league or major junior, up the ladder to the NHL, going back and playing the middle at the NHL level?
So I think that this is going to be a more long-winded explanation, but I'm more in the camp of, if you're not doing it now, you're probably not doing it. Like if you did it when you were playing junior or you did it a long time ago, there's just something about an NHL center iceman that I think they are wired and think the game a little bit differently, and the patterns that they run in the game are just different. Here in Toronto, every year they say William Nylander was drafted as a centerman. Oh, it always comes up. We're going to try him out, and it lasts 2 periods or 2 preseason games. Like, that's the most it ever lasts. He's not wired that way, even though he played center. And I think a lot of these guys, you have to remember, at some point in their careers, they were the best player wherever they were. And a lot of times, the best players, forwards, they played center.
Yeah.
But I will say this, like, I know other guys have touched upon this. The game is changing a little bit, in the sense that the center position is not as traditional as it used to be, but I think it's dependent on how the team plays. Because there's some teams where, and if we talk about the defensive zone, they're basically asking their centerman to just go from side to side. You're going corner to corner, the wingers are staying put, and you got to do it. Like, you're the horse. So in those situations, you have to be the traditional center iceman. There's other teams that will say, first guy back, assume the center ice position until we have an opportunity to make the switch, and we'll go about our business. So there's a little more trust in, like, the winger center interchange. In those situations, you still kind of need, like, the center iceman, though. Like, you need the guy that is the commander in chief there in the center ice position.
There's eventually a reset, and you get back to being center.
Where it always kind of comes back to your own zone. In the offensive zone, like, we were always, the center iceman is the guy that has to stay above and protect everyone. Well, that's out the window now, because teams, just forecheck with their first guy, their second guy, their third guy, and the third guy is responsible for kind of protecting things, making sure the D are allowed to pinch so he can cover up for him. That's not the center iceman anymore. But I think things always come back to your own zone. And it's always like, at some point, we need that guy who's the commander of the situation, and that is the traditional center iceman. So it's not as black and white, I would say, but I still believe that, like, if you're not doing it now, at this point, you're probably not a center iceman in the NHL.
There are situations where that isn't true, though, right? Like, there's situations where guys just get blocked. Like, JT Miller, he's not a great centerman, but I think he's a centerman, and he was just blocked in Tampa Bay. Like, they did not need him, and I think Willie Nylander's in that same boat. I mean, you're going to unseat Matthews or Tavares? No, probably not.
No.
Like,
Tavares at this point, yes.
Maybe they would have taken. Trust me,
I-
if they could find a second line solution for Tavares at center, they would have. Like, that's why Willie kept getting the audition there, so they could try and put Tavares on the wing or put him at the third line center position. But, like, this whole forecheck thing, like, where people talk about F1, F2, F3. Think about it this way: first player goes in, hunts the puck. Second player goes in, you got to seek the next available option. So it's like your D partner or the centerman. Next available option. The third guy, he seals everything. He's above. He seals whatever side that puck is going to. So it's not like you have to be a center iceman to do any of those 3 things. No. But I think when you come back into your own zone, as far as having a defensive conscience and saying, I need to stop in this position and I can't just keep my momentum going, that's where I think the center mindset is different than guys who have played wing and kind of interchanged and just want to keep things moving.
Forgive me, Frank, but we started this by going on a dive of Toronto concert venues. I don't really want to go on a dive of the Leafs center ice position.
No
Blake Price, you know how much our audience hates that.
I said JT
Anyways,
Miller. I was talking JT Miller. I merely brought that in.
In terms of the 2 ways you just described of how teams play in the center ice position, how did Tocchet play? We don't really know how Foot's going to play just yet, but tell us, how did Tocchet play? Was it the traditional center, or was it the F1, F2, F3 indiscriminate?
So when I was briefly with him in Pittsburgh, it was first player back is assuming the low responsibility. You don't even call it the center responsibility anymore. You call it like the low forward responsibility until you have an opportunity to make the switch, and then there's a little communication, and then you do that, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for teams to say wingers are just coming back to their spots and they're going to wait for the traditional center iceman to come back and play low. So everyone's doing that now. I think where what I was talking about earlier, the center that goes from side to side, Teams will do that, or teams will do something that's basically called like an interchange, where if the puck's on one side of the ice and the puck switches like behind the net and goes to the other side, sometimes the winger who was on that side, he'll go down and play there, and the guy who was playing center just pops up into the winger spot. So I think that's where like it becomes less and less that you need a true center iceman, but eventually you do switch back. Like it does happen. So I the way I remember things in Pittsburgh and basically everywhere, first guy back, assume the responsibility until your centerman gets back and he calls you off and you have an opportunity to switch.
I don't know if Adam Foote is the guy to do this, to take it to the next level. But do you think it goes another level? I mean, we've talked about positionless sports before. The NBA is certainly close to that. Baseball with opener pitchers, with shortstops playing right behind the pitcher, or second baseman right behind the pitcher. I mean, things are moving in other sports. Eligibility in the NFL. Do we get to the point where, finding yourself a tried and true absolute center, do you twist yourself into knots? And when are we going to see a head coach just dress 3 wingers and just say, hey, do your duty, and we'll figure it out as we go?
I don't even think it's for the face-offs, because I like there's wingers that do well in face-offs.
Yes, exactly.
I think face-offs just kind of comes down to, do you practice it? How's your wrist strength? How are your reflexes? I think you can win face-offs.
It's a singular skill. No, totally.
It doesn't come down to the face-offs for me.
No.
If teams were thinking this way, that they were willing to kind of throw 3 forwards over the boards and say, let's roll it out and see what happens, then we wouldn't have all this narrative of teams saying we need the second line center. And we wouldn't make such a big deal come playoff time when we do the matchup, like who controls the middle of the ice. The centerman oftentimes controls the middle of the ice, right? So I still, as much as things interchange and players are everywhere on the ice and there's a lot of communication, there's switches that happen, it's more those things that happen are more about applying as much pressure as quickly as possible, because there's not a lot of, there's too much gap of time if you're waiting for everyone who's the right position to do the right thing. You just give guys too much space. So I still think we'll have a lot of motion in the game. We'll have some more freewheeling, but we'll still like seek out the guy who is, the legit centerman. I think whatever. We're a Vancouver show, but if we're just bringing up examples here, like Ottawa's an interesting situation because Stützle, he kind of darts like a winger, right? Like he's not super traditional as a centerman, but the way he does it, you feel like he's always kind of like in that middle corridor of the ice. So it's interesting, but there's one, like if you watch him play, you're like, I could see him being a winger, but he works as a centerman.
I've heard your colleague Jeff O'Neill say I might be the last guy alive who still believes he is just a winger, and he's not, and they're not going to be everything they want to be with him playing at center ice. Having said all that, Martin Necas, can he play center?
That's a good question. For me, I see him as a winger. Like I always just have seen him that way. I think for a guy like that who kind of oozes creativity, he's almost better suited to do that type of stuff when he's on the wing, when he doesn't have to worry about responsibility the same way a center iceman would. I see him more as a winger than a centerman.
But he's one of the fastest players in the league. Is the speed also better used on the flank, or can it work as well functionally down the middle?
Here's a Mike Sullivan saying for you. He would talk about this with the centerman all the time. You have to cut down your skating when you play center ice. And so for a guy that's really fast like Necas, a guy that's really fast like Stützle, and there's a lot of like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, right? Like there's so many fast centermen, but it's the timing of things, cutting down your skate. You don't necessarily always have to be the fastest guy, but it also depends how you play. Like, are you doing the McKinnon where you circle back in behind your defenseman and try and pick up the puck that way, or are you darting right through like Stützle does? Like it makes
a lot of sense.
I get that he's fast, and I appreciate that there's, the fastest player in the game is a centerman, but I kind of like the fact that he's a pretty creative guy. He's going to do some things that are risky. I'd rather have the guy doing those things on the boards rather than in the middle of the ice causing trouble.
It makes sense what Sullivan says. It reminds me of this guy was talking about last year when we were looking at Messi in Argentina in the Gold Cup. Lionel Messi's big thing is play slow it down. Like, I want to see what's in front of me, and I'm not be able to do that at full speed. There are times to go play full speed, but you can't be doing that at all times.
How about this soccer cut for you, Blake? My buddy Andrea Pirlo, he wasn't fast, but Pirlo, he had the puck, slowed everything, he had the ball, he slowed everything down. It was unbelievable.
Hearing you describe Netjes, guys, though.
Of course, he's going to bring it back to an Italian.
Yes, that's true. Hearing you describe Netjes, you're describing Philip Hedl, too, incidentally. So as we discuss the Canucks search for a second-line center, I think we should keep in mind, ideally, Philip Hedl is not a center either. Like, he has been questioned as a center his entire career as well. So now the Canucks are putting the guy who really shouldn't be on the wing, shouldn't be in the second line.
Way from Filipino playing wing for the Vancouver
but
Canucks.
that's the point. Like, you're desperately putting him in the middle, but he's actually not a perfect center. No.
I guess, but they need him to play center right now.
Yes.
And I guess the thing with Hedl is, for some reason, like, because he's been doing it more, I visually just see him as a centerman. There's just something about.
But he'd be a way better winger.
Doing it.
He'd be a way better winger.
You could say the same thing about a number of guys who are playing center right now, and it would be for different reasons than Hedl. You would say some players are too slow to play in the middle of the ice, where they can't create that same kind of separation that someone like Hedl can. Like, it's not an easy thing, but like once you have it, you have it. Like Vegas was willing to part with Nicholas Waugh, who is a fourth line center on their team and probably isn't a fourth line center on a lot of other teams.
Correct.
You know, so there's when you have a position of strength like that, it just goes to show you how hard a team can be to play against.
Last question for you. Jack Roslovic is still out there. Can he play center? And give me your player evaluation profile on him.
So Roslovic's an interesting one because he's always had all this skill, like really skilled player, good shot. And then this year, everything just finally clicked. Like, it really popped for him. And he played, if there's 12 different positions to play as a forward, he played all 12 in Carolina this year. Like, he was everywhere. He was first line, fourth line, center, wing. He was really good off the rush. Like, I think there was a point in time there where, Mikko Rantanen was having a hard time getting acclimated to the way they played, and I think they tried to put him with Roslovic at one point because he was good off the rush and Rantanen could feed off that. But yeah, he's no doubt he's a good player. No doubt he's a skilled player. He's going to get a pay raise compared to what he was making. The thing with him, I think, is always going to be term. Like, how much term are you willing to attach to a guy who, based on his skill set, it has probably like underachieved a little bit, but really popped off this year and had a nice year. So it's almost like one of those things where, well, let's just take it year by year and see how this thing goes. But I think if you're Vancouver, you like the fact that he can create off the rush, which was something that was so difficult for them last season. And he would be more naturally inclined to fit that need. But you're talking about potentially another $4 million on the books, maybe, when it's all said and done. I don't know
you
how
still think he's going to command that?
Well, he's making $2 now. He could be in a situation where he's waiting for teams to move money. I could totally see that.
That's been a theory.
I've
heard Toronto for that purpose.
Pick and choose where he goes that makes sense, where there's going to be a good fit. But yeah, like, it's a 20-goal scorer, skilled guy, right-handed player, versatile in offensive ways. So, it's not a bad player to have. It's just, how much is it going to cost and how much term, like everything.
And I know it's not all about the face-offs. He was 54% in the dot last year on 355.
We've reached beggars can't be choosers territory in free agency.
Yeah. Everyone's at the cottage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Or the cabin.
Yes.
As the case may be. Or the chalet, if you're en français.
Or the camp, if you're from Northern Ontario.
That's true.
Oh, wow.
If you prefer mosquitoes.
If you're from Northern Ontario, you live at a cottage, you vacation at your camp.
That's right.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah. See you, boys.